Welcome to Operational Harmony, Balancing Business and Mental Well-Being, a podcast with honest discussions about professional life and mental well-being in a natural conversational way. Your host is Nikki, founder of Nikki's Office, where she supports entrepreneurs through operations, systems, and strategy. And now, let's hear from our guest.
Hi, I'm Jon Connelly, and I'm the founder of Rapid Resolution Therapy, and it's good to be here with you, Nikki.
Good to have you.
People who would like to improve the way their mind is working for them. That would mean people meet with me because they would like to shift, change, adjust, improve the way they feel, think, act, react, interact. People come in because they're doing well and want to find a way to increase that and strengthen that and move further forward. People come in because there's something going on that's causing them to be experiencing some kind of turmoil or stuckness. By turmoil, just feeling in a way that people don't want to be feeling or stuck. Generally, people say, hey, there's a way that there's something I'd like to be doing, engaging in, moving toward or moving away from, and I haven't been able to do that so far. So those are the kinds of things that people come and meet with us about.
How do you help?
It's a great question. So as I'm meeting with somebody, the first thing I'm going to do is let that person know that what I'm providing as we begin is a perspective, a viewpoint, a way of thinking, as opposed to a truth. I find that there are really brilliant people who don't seem to be able to agree on what's true with each other and often even with themselves, because the view of what's true changes through time. And so I certainly don't know how I would be able to pin down and say what truth is. What I look for instead is this way of thinking, is this viewpoint, is it something that improves your life? So I'm starting suggesting that's what I'm going to be offering. And then I begin my meetings by saying, what should I know? What should I understand about what's been going on, what you've been experiencing currently, so that I can begin to be of value to you. When I was trained in a mental health profession, they had us begin with a list of the things we were supposed to obtain from somebody, and that was called a social. And boy, they sent us out with this paper with all these questions. I think the questions were so we wouldn't get distracted by what people were saying and manage to stay on our script and obtain this information. I found that to be not a good way to get valuable information, and certainly not a good way to get people to feel connected or at ease in moving forward. So that's why my beginning is just about the opposite of what I was taught. In fact, just about everything I've developed and do is pretty close to 180 from any of the things that I had learned to do in order to get licensed in a mental health profession. So I begin but with that question, what's going on for you currently? And at that point, I'm going to really listen and do my very best to understand what this individual wants me to know in order that I can be useful to them. So I'm following what that person would like me to know rather than my own curiosity. And I find in doing that I'm able to get much more valuable information. One, too, that this individual is running the show at this point in terms of what they think is, they know more than I do, what they think is relevant for me to understand in order to move us forward. And I continue with that until that individual says, you know what? I think you really get me. And there's nothing else about what's going on for me that I would need you to understand in order to be able to assist me. I really feel deeply understood. And that seems most of the people who are in the coaching and mental health field feel they pretty much do understand people. But I've found that people who actually get understood find it's a pretty rare and unusual thing to have someone really listening to them. I'm not following my curiosity. I'm following what this individual would like me to get in order to be useful to them. So when that part is complete, the next thing I'll move to is to say that I'd like to describe a way of thinking. And going back to what I said initially, I'm providing a way to think rather than a truth. And I would suggest to that individual that it would be useful for us to think that whatever they are experiencing, in fact, whatever anybody is experiencing, is being caused from within the mind of the person who's experiencing it. Even in extreme situations, if somebody's experiencing something, it's being caused from within that individual's mind. An extreme situation, for instance, somebody's leg is on fire, and we say, what is that person experiencing? Certainly agony. And what's causing the agony? And I would say, oh, agony is being caused by his mind. Mind meaning outside of conscious awareness, where mind is processing and responding to information. And I'm likely to have somebody say, that's totally crazy. Can't you see that his leg is on fire? What do you mean that the thing that's causing the pain is his mind? And my response would be, I don't think he'd be in much pain if he didn't have a mind. That our minds are causing everything we're experiencing, and they're causing everything we're experiencing in order to do really one thing. And that is to cause a behavior, and the behavior is probably designed to promote survival of self, people or concepts or things that one feels a deep connection with. So I think that's what's going on all the time. And so I would, at that point, I've really listened to what that individual has said. She feels like I'm really on the point and I understand what she's saying. And then I'm going to share that perspective. And it's significant to me that we agree on that if possible, because if it's not that if we're not thinking of it that way, then we think of it the way that most people think of things, which is that the thing that's causing a person's experience is either his environment or perhaps something going on within his body. What's making you so angry? My mother said this, my husband said that, my back is killing me. My situation is like this, the government did this. And if it's those things, I can listen, I can be concerned, I can be compassionate, but I think that I can't really offer much other than connection and sympathy. I guess that's worth quite a bit, but I want to do much more than that. I want to cause not just sympathy, but we're looking to cause a significant, deep, and lasting transformation. And so what do I have access to? I don't have access to the way somebody else is treating you. I have access to your mind and how it's responding and interacting with things. That's not how it was when I began my career. My first job, really out of college, was that I was assigned to be what they call a child protective service worker. And that meant I would go to homes where there was allegations of abuse, sometimes neglect, and knock on the door and check things out. And there I'd see a little baby. And I certainly wasn't attempting to change the way the baby's mind was processing information. I was all about the environment. So I would say, what can we do to change the environment for that child in the home if that's what is possible to make him okay? And if not, what can we do to change his environment even more dramatically outside the home? And so that was the opposite of what I'm doing now, because I'm looking to what we do can certainly change people's environment, because as they are experiencing things differently, they can affect their environment differently. But what I have access to is what's going on within that individual's mind. And I don't. So that's why I begin with that kind of understanding, that kind of agreement. That's what's going on there.
So, and I have been through a lot of therapy. I have been through talk therapy. We tried the buzzies. I can't remember the name of that therapy. Where the buzzies go back and forth. EMDR, yes.
EMDR.
And I've done the DBT. EMDR didn't really work for me because the buzzies bother my hands.
They have it with your hands like that, but they often do things just with eye movement. Did they do it both ways?
They haven't. No, she hasn't tried the other way yet, but she did do the buzzies, and I don't think I did very well. So we haven't done it again. But I do know that in the past, they have tried to do therapies where they just have me repeat some of the bad stuff that happened over and over again to get me desensitized to it. That didn't really work for me because I just relived it every single time. I do not believe that I've tried the RRT or that kind of thing, mostly because talk therapy, being able to talk out what's happening now, helps enough that I'm doing a lot better than I used to be.
I'm glad to hear that. I said, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, which is fine. So how does it work? Do people just talk about stuff that's going on now and you're able to somehow help them with stuff from before? Because I know for me, I connect my own dots. I'm too aware of my own mental health. It's a pain in the neck. But like, I know that if I'm having a bad week or month or day, whatever, it might be connected to something in the past. And if I go digging hard, I can figure it out. So I'm just not sure I understand how, and maybe I never will. I'm not exactly a genius, but how does what you're doing help?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying I don't understand.
Oh, no, I think your questions are more than legitimate and make great sense. I do want to comment on a couple of the things you mentioned, one being the process of EMDR. Many people who have trained in EMDR then come and train with me. I actually have a lot of respect for people who have moved forward to train in that method, because that's not what's taught in their graduate programs. It's not what's necessary for them to be licensed. And the only people who would go through all the extra effort to train in EMDR are people who really do have a passion, I might say, to make a significant difference in people's lives. So those are the people who train with us, and I think those are the people who train with those folks too. Lots of folks who have been trained in EMDR, as mentioning, have been gone on and trained in rapid resolution therapy with me. And although they sometimes mention that what they learned from learning EMDR was more effective than anything they had learned previously in actually making a difference, most of those folks tell me they no longer will utilize that as a resource after learning the process that I'm teaching. And when I ask them why they would discontinue that, they mention, well, one, it takes a lot longer, but also the EMDR process doesn't always cause people to relive and re-experience in any painful way prior experiences. It doesn't always do that, but it often can do that. And the process we're using with rapid resolution therapy doesn't do that. And so it works faster and apparently and without the possible painful reaction. I don't think EMDR is always painful, but it certainly can be. I wanted to know what Dr. Shapiro was doing and how she was training and what was going on with that. So I did go ahead and enroll and go through that training experience. And one of the things I found was she really did well in gathering a really bright group of people who were really interested in making a difference. And that felt good to me. The other thing I was really impressed with that she was doing is part of that training had people in practice rooms and groups attempting to do what they were learning on each other. And I was impressed with that because having gone through training in mental health fields and training a lot of mental health professionals so that I can ask them about this, I can tell you that was unusual in my training for licensure. We never did anything with each other. We went and did things with other people, generally people that were economically challenged, or else why would they bother coming to us? So those were the things I really respected about what she was doing and the people that are training with her were doing. However, in those breakout rooms, these folks it wasn't unlikely that they were just experiencing such turmoil, and there was banging, and there was crying, and there was sobbing, and there was all kinds of emotional stuff going on. And that concerned me because I'm not thinking that feeling bad is the best way to start feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things you mentioned that I wanted to comment on. The other thing was you said that you went through a process which encouraged you to speak over and over again about prior experiences that were disturbing to you. And if we take a memory and we redo the memory, so if I remember something that my teacher, an interaction, maybe seventh grade, I can remember that, and I remember it today. And then tomorrow I have on my calendar to remember it again, and I remember it in more and more detail. And then I remember it tomorrow and remember it the next day and remember it the next day. If I work on causing myself to recall it again and again, I find that it's more likely that will cause it to be more impactful rather than less impactful.
I agree with
So when I went to train to be a mental health professional, that was one of the things they were thought was a really good idea to be telling people to talk about things that had been quite painful to them. And then when I went from past graduate school and into postdoctoral training, they were teaching me even more vividly how to get people to deeply relive the worst moments of their lives. One of the best way to do that, if you're looking to relive terrible past experiences, is to go there by chasing odors and smells. Those are really good ways to trigger really disturbing experiences or positive experiences. If you want to remember somebody making you cornbread for Christmas, but we weren't looking much for cornbread, and people would repeat this stuff and cry and sob, and thought, this is that I don't like this at all, but I'm going to stay with it because I felt a real, a passion to make a difference. See, I spent 5 years doing child protective service work, knocking on doors and being with children who were being neglected and abused, and generally working for an agency who did a terribly inadequate job of making any difference there. And then I spent an additional more than 5 years working for another agency, which was dealing with runaway, throwaway teens, who most of those kids who were out of their homes, as much as you certainly don't think it's a good idea for some 13-year-old to be living on the street. It was actually an improvement from where they had been before they courageously left. So having been pounded with what terrible experiences people can go through and the lingering effect that can have, I was passionate to make a difference. And that's why I said, I don't like this. I don't like anything about having somebody on a mat screaming and crying and vomiting and all of this, reliving terrible things. But if this is what it takes, I'm going to do it. And I did it until I realized I'm not sensing these people are getting better. And that's when I got out of that and decided to leave all that behind and put things together in a different way. You had mentioned, do we just talk about what's going on currently? No, of course not. But what's going on currently is the top of the pile key, because people aren't coming in to me to reminisce about what they felt like earlier. They're coming in because of what's going on in their life currently. Now, what's going on in somebody's life currently always is being affected by the data from things that went on earlier. And so with the RT process, what we're really doing is shifting that data, clearing the way mind outside of conscious awareness unconsciously, really the whole mind is processing information so that there can be a difference in the way people are feeling and functioning. People do deal with experiences they had earlier in life that were very disturbing, but we've learned to do that in a way that isn't disturbing. We don't think the thing is to be causing the person to be feeling badly about something that happened to them earlier. We think it might be good to be realizing what happened earlier is different from what's going on currently, and to separate and free oneself from it rather than the other way. I think the way I've learned to do it, and the way many people were doing things, and the more recent somebody would tell you, talk about it over and over again, is because that mental health model has been thinking that the problem people are having is that they have emotions that got stuck inside of them, repressed emotions stuck inside of them, and the solution is to get the person to release those emotions. And they figure that to get them to release the emotion, they have to get them to express the emotion. And then they figure to get them to express the emotion, they got to get them to feel that emotion. And so what they're trying to do in getting you to say this thing over and over again is to feel feelings that you would then be expressing, and then therefore they believe be releasing. You'll notice it didn't work. And of course it doesn't work. Here's an example. If you had a girlfriend that told you that her husband was incredibly filled with rage the night before, screaming, throwing, threatening things, you wouldn't say to her, you ought to go home and be with him because it sounds like it's got to be the safest place in the world. I'm sure he got it all out. It doesn't make any sense. We know the people who are most likely to fly into rages are people that have been flying into rages. So the whole notion that you can get people better by getting them to feel worse is, to me, it's problematic. And that's why we certainly don't do that. In fact, the system that I've developed is deeply different from anything else that's out there, that we really want to get it out to the world and offer it and make sure that people can understand and benefit from it in the easiest way possible for them. And one of the things that I do to make sure that happens is I do a meeting. It's an open meeting. It's called Solutions. And I think it's been like 6 times a month, but it's going up to 8 times a month. Meetings that are generally 2 or more hours, where people gather from all over the world and deal with just every kind of personal issue that you can imagine with me during that meeting. And after there is significant resolution, I'm then showing other people who are in the meeting how they can apply the same shift, the same tool, the same perspective to cause clearing and ease in their own lives. So I'm thinking this is the time of my life to be making sure I'm making a contribution. And we know that there are people all over the world who are going through a whole lot of suffering, but might not have any kind of financial resources. And that's why we do it without ever any kind of charge and do it a whole lot. And boy, it's wonderful to be getting the letters from people who talk about how their lives have changed. Many of them because they personally interacted with me, but many of them who didn't personally interact, didn't want to, felt a little reluctant or shy, but they were in the background and mentally were participating in processes that were life-changing. One way for your listeners to get an understanding of this process, particularly those who, for everyone, but I'm thinking particularly those who have been through other kinds of processes and might think, nothing works. How can anything work for me? Nothing has so far. We don't expect you to take it on faith. We say, hey, come in, check us out, spend a lot of time. Don't pay a nickel for it. And I bet you're going to find that your life is changing in a very positive way. I also have a number of books out on Amazon, which describe in great detail how this process of transformation takes place for people. There's one called Life-Changing Conversations, one called Grief is Not Sacred, one called Quick Shifts, and there's another 2 on the way. So those are other ways people can approach and learn from this. I put out a really powerful, from what I hear, that's what people tell me, healing recording, where people can listen to this recording, close their eyes. Different things are done through different ears, different sounds, different words. And all you do is stick on headphones and close your eyes and have the experience. And from what I've heard, people are experiencing some really significant breakthroughs there. And if that's of interest to you, you can just send us a note through the website, which is rapidresolutiontherapy.com. That recording is also provided at no charge at all, because we want to make sure that people who are dealing with emotional turmoil or physical illness have resources within reach that can make a difference. And we find there's so much can be done with the mind that will even make some very significant improvements in what's going on with people's bodies. A lot of the people we see are referred by medical people who want their patients to have the advantage of this process as well. Let's see. Yes, there are also folks who are looking not just to benefit from this personally, but also to be able to provide this to themselves and others. And so I do training for people who are looking to be able to master and utilize these processes. It used to be, as I began, that I only accepted people who already had licenses in a mental health field. But those people began telling me that what they learned in their mental health training really had no advantage at all. And they recommended that we open up to people who haven't had that kind of training so that more people could benefit. And so we are training people for a profession that is, I think, the most interesting thing that somebody can possibly do. And it's convenient in that you work from anywhere that you want, whenever you want, anywhere in the world, whenever time you would like to. And some people have just utilized that to make a difference for family and friends, but others have created very significant and lucrative professions from being involved in training with me. The next training begins on the 9th of January. It's called Transformations. All of this stuff is best accessed through the website, which is rapidresolutiontherapy.com.